Hello. The Divine Code reading for October 26th, pages 281 and 282. We are in the chapter Laws of Vows and Promises. Topic number 12. What is the definition of swearing in vain? This is one of the following four types of vows. A. One who swears about a known thing, in which there exists no doubt of its truth, like one who swears that a stone is a stone. Included in this category are those who hurry to swear when there's no true need for an oath. So this is a statement where everybody agrees to something, like water is wet. Everybody agrees. It's just a definition, and it's understood. There's no reason to make a vow for that because it's self-understood. The person is not accomplishing something by making the vow. And the second one is likewise B. One who swears about a matter which all know is false, like swearing that a man is a woman or a stone is gold, which is not only false, but needs no verification. So the person, in the first case, the person is saying something that everyone agrees is the truth. The other person is saying something which is so blatantly false that the oath doesn't accomplish anything. Now, the stone being gold, we just have to make sure the definitions, if we're talking about granite, is gold. Obviously, it's not. So the person makes an oath that everyone understands is false, and his oath doesn't accomplish anything because no one's going to believe him. C. One who swears to do something that he has no power to accomplish, like swearing not to sleep for 3 consecutive days and nights, or not to eat, and I would include drinking fluid, not to eat or drink for 7 days, or not to sleep or eat without giving a time frame for his vow. See Shokan Oric Uridea 236.4, which implies that the vow exists forever. Utters a vow in vain, since he will surely not be able to keep it. One may not pain himself and deprive himself of sleep for 1 or 2 days until he goes against his vow, and likewise for deprivation of food. Rather, it is permitted for him to eat and sleep right away. For since his vow is in vain, his words are of no consequence. And that's the Rambam Laws of Oaths 5:20. So if the person vows to do something that's impossible, like staying up for 3 consecutive days and nights, he makes a ridiculous vow. It's not required to give it the old college try, because he's not going to be able to finish it. Therefore, there's no reason to even start it under the pretext he's going to try, because it's absurd. The vow was made in vain, but he doesn't have to. If he's a pauper and he vows to give $1 million, it's not that he has to give everything he's got and then he reneges on the rest of it, but rather it was absurd to begin with. Therefore, it holds no value. The vow holds no value. And D, the fourth example, one who swears about a prohibition he is commanded in. For example, swearing he will eat flesh taken from a living animal, or steal, or commit adultery. He has uttered a vain oath, since it is forbidden for him to keep his words, and he has no need to make such a vow. So if a person vows to do something he's by Torah law prohibited to do, then he's not required to follow it. He's actually prohibited to follow the vow. In that case, it's a vow that was said in vain. And that's Laws of Oaths 5, chapter 5, topic 1 and 2, Shokanoric Eurodea, chapter 236. My apologies. Instead, that's the Rambam, Laws of Oaths, chapter 1, 4, and 7. Topic number 13. A person should not swear by the actions of others that they will keep or will not do a future action. So that's the case where a person is swearing that someone else is going to do something. And he doesn't have the power to have any influence. He can't swear that someone else is going to do something. Since he does not have the power to keep his words, and they are not bound by his vow. And that's the Rambam, Laws of Oaths 5, topic 1 and 2, in Shokanoric Eurodea, chapter 236. Rabbi Zalman Nehemiah Goldberg notes that such a vow is not necessarily in vain, for if it was so, it would be considered in vain whether others keep the vow or not. The reason it appears is because one who swears to sin or to do an impossible action intends that his vow should enable him to do so. And so it is therefore said in vain. In contrast, one who swears that others will do an action does not intend that they must do so, but rather he knows the future and can predict that others will do the action. And he does not necessarily swear for naught. Therefore, one who swears that rain will or will not fall the next day does not swear in vain, but rather swears by the ability of his foresight, like a meteorologist who predicts the weather. I'm not 100%. It's a meteorologist. No, we know the absurdity that a meteorologist can predict the weather. You could say it's a 70% chance of rain. If he swears, and we're talking about an oath given by the name of God, because that's what the chapter is dealing with here. If he's making an oath swearing that it'll rain tomorrow, I don't know any weathermen that would be willing to make an oath that they know for sure it's going to rain tomorrow. He says he thinks it's going to rain tomorrow. He expects it to rain tomorrow. Everybody knows that that is a prediction, and it's not an oath. And that's probably what Rabbi Goldberg is speaking of here, is that it's understood to be a prediction. And it's understood to be an element of uncertainty. That's assumed, especially if you're talking about a meteorologist as an example. So what's prohibited here is to swear that something is going to happen that we don't really know. Now, if we say the sun is going to come up tomorrow, that's pretty much an established fact. It's even in the Torah. So that we can swear by, but it would be absurd to say it because it would be the swearing in vain, because it's something that everyone understands to be a fact. So the swearing is for the purpose of something that other people don't know. And so to swear according to a future action that a person does not they themselves have power over. If the person swears not to eat a chocolate cake tomorrow, something that he would have control over, then he's allowed to make that swear. That's an honest vow. But if the person swears that it's going to rain tomorrow, that person, you can't make that kind of an obligation upon the clouds to rain. The person cannot make an obligation upon someone else. They swear that the politician is going to keep his word. Now, we would hope he's going to keep his word, but we can't swear based on that because we can't swear based upon what someone else is going to do. We can't obligate someone else. We don't have the power over that person, is what's being said here. Unless they agreed to his words in the matter ascribed above in topic 10. So if the person makes a vow, we in the community are not going to eat cake tomorrow. So if everybody agrees to that vow, then the other people are bound by it. Now, the person making the initial statement is not binding the people. What's binding the people to the vow, the other people to the vow, is that they said they agreed to it. So in that case, it's possible to get other people to be obligated to a vow, but they have to agree to it. A man who swears to marry a woman and vice versa is not considered to have uttered a vain oath, since the intention is such that if the second person consents, then the first person will be obligated to keep the vow. When this happens, the first person does not become bound by the first person does become bound by the oath. Likewise, in a case where one person swears on condition that the second person will do something, this oath is not in vain and is binding as soon as the condition is met. See Rima Eurydeia, chapter 236. So in the case of like a marriage proposal, the person says that if the person's making a marriage proposal and they swear they'll marry the person, if the other person says no, then there's no agreement, because it's bound upon it says that there'll be an agreement, and then the person will marry the other person. Or if the person in the process of a marriage proposal says, if you marry me, I promise to take out the garbage every week or every day. I'll take the garbage out. Now, if the person accepts the marriage proposal, then the first person is bound to take out the garbage. If the person doesn't accept the marriage proposal, then the first person is not bound to take out the garbage because it was conditional. So the second person who rejected the marriage proposal can't call back in a month later and say, hey, how come you haven't been taking out the garbage? And the person is not bound to take out the garbage for the person that said no. But if the person says yes and they agree to the agreement, then the first person is bound to take out the garbage. That's a conditional. That's what it's talking about here. It's conditional upon the second person doing what they part of the agreement. You'd be like saying if neighbors, one neighbor tells the other neighbor, if you rake my leaves, then I promise, I make a vow that I will shovel your sidewalk in the winter. So the first person, if they rake the leaves, then the second person rakes the leaves. The first person is required to shovel the sidewalk, to shovel the snow in the winter. But if they don't rake the leaves, then the first person is not bound by the vow. Topic number 14. It is permitted for a Gentile to swear to keep one of the 7 Noahide commandments, even though he's already obligated in them, since he sees this as a necessary vow in order to encourage himself to keep the commandment. Rambam, The Laws of Oaths, 11:3. So if a person's struggling with one of the commandments, the person is having difficulty not eating the limb of a living animal. So he takes a vow not to eat the limb of a living animal. He's allowed to take that vow, even though it might be seen as vowing on something that's already accepted as true, but he's vowing it upon himself that he's not going to do this. He's not vowing that, he's not swearing an oath that it's prohibited to eat limb of a living animal. That would be obvious, and that would be a vain swearing. But if the person is vowing to change his behavior, that he's not going to eat the limb of a living animal, that would be proper, especially if he's struggling with that area of his life. Topic number 15. One who intends to swear and resolves a certain matter in his heart, but does not actually voice the commitment, is not bound by it as a vow. Likewise, one who resolved in his heart to prohibit himself from doing a certain action, and erred and mentioned another vow which he did not intend, like one who intends to swear not to eat with person A, but erred and voiced a promise not to eat with person B. He may so eat with both of them, as one is only bound by a vow which is both intends and voices in accordance. But resolve alone or an inerrant spoken vow are not binding. So the person decides he wants to rake his neighbor's leaves. He makes that decision. But when it comes out of his mouth, he says that he promises to shovel his sidewalk. Now, maybe he should fulfill the vow, but he's not required to fulfill the vow. It might be a nice thing that because it came out of his mouth, it might be a nice thing if he goes ahead and does it, but he's not required in the laws of vows to do it because he did not intend to say it. It came out mixed up. If one intended in his heart not to eat bread made from wheat, and then swore to eat bread without not to eat bread without specifying the type, he is only forbidden to eat wheat bread. But his heart and his heart and his mouth are alike in this matter. In contrast, if he swears and says, "I swear such and such with your consent," he cannot say that he had other thoughts in his mind, since his heart with spoken words were in accordance with the vow would be dependent upon the consent of others. Therefore, this is a complete vow, and the consent of the others takes place of his consent. So, in his own mind, he says he's only going to eat. He vows not to eat wheat bread, but he gets confused and he says he's not going to eat bread. Well, the part that is his consent, his intent, and what he says with his mouth, that part of the vow holds. So he does not eat the wheat bread, but he is allowed to eat other types of bread. So, because the intent has to be together with the spoken vow. If he makes a statement and then he hands the decision over to another person. If you agree, I promise not to eat bread. He makes a statement. If someone else agrees, then he promises not to eat bread. Then even if his original intention was not to eat wheat bread, but now he's handed over the decision making to another person. Now the other person has control over the intent. So if the other person says that he agrees that the first person should not eat bread, then the first person is bound by that oath, by the vow. Halakha number 16. If one swears or promises and then rescinds his oath in a short period of time, equal to the time required to say, "Peace upon you, my teacher." So he has like a 2-second rule. He says something, he didn't really intend it, it was a mistake, and it just came out of his mouth, and he has like a 2-second rule to take it back. Or this is not a vow, or I have, so he says like bleedinator, people say bleedinator, or I have reconsidered, and the like, then the vow is not binding. This is compared to one who makes a mistake and did not really have intention in his heart for a vow. So the person, his mind, oftentimes people talk. They talk so fast, and their words get ahead of their brain. So the brain is allowed 2 seconds to catch up with the guy's vow and can rescind the vow. If the brain is more than 2 seconds behind his mouth, then he needs to learn to talk slower. Something that I'll do is if I'm saying I'll do something, I might say I would like to do. Yeah, I plan to do this, or I look forward to doing this. The blenator thing gives the impression that the person is purposely not making a vow, and therefore it becomes the way it's used is it creates the impression the person's not going to do it. Therefore, that the wording that a person says in order to protect his ability, in order to say he's not making a vow, but he intends to do it, he just simply should say he will make every effort to do it. And then that becomes a vow that he'll make a serious effort to do it, but he can't promise he's actually going to do it if there's an uncertainty involved. It just needs to be spelled out in a more clear way. And people need to make sure that their mouths do not get ahead of their brain. The brain has to rule the heart. And the heart, the brain has to rule. The intellect has to rule, not the mouth. Thank you.